You want to win on DraftKings, right? Well, your odds of winning go up significantly if you can figure out how to stack this game in tournaments. Let's discuss. Starting off with Philly at Detroit, where the Eagles are 4-point road favorites in this one. Reeves, a couple different road favorites that we're going to talk about across these videos, but initial thoughts on this one. Obviously, if you're watching this for the first time, we do build a lineup at the end, so look forward to that.
Yeah, this Eagles team is a team that I'm pretty high on coming into the season. I'm looking to try to get a reveal on them. I mean, when you go back to a year ago, these two teams met, and it was kind of a real inflection point for the Eagles season. You know, prior to that point, the Eagles were just 2-5. They didn't have much of an offensive identity. They were operating with a 60% passing rate on plays outside of the fourth quarter. Then this team went 7-3 over the remainder of the season with a 44% pass rate, quarters 1 through 3, which is the lowest rate in the NFL. They threw the ball just 37% of the time with the lead over that period, which is by far dead last in the league. This game, they won 44-6, kind of never looked back. They only threw the ball 16 times, ran it 46 times, and the rest was kind of be told on the Eagles season. Now, coming into this season, they kind of have all their chips on the table here to kind of be incentivized to kind of revert back to seeing what Jalen Hurts has and kind of open the season maybe a little bit more aggressively like they did a year ago. Obviously you bring in our guy Arthur Juan this year, give him the big contract in the trade. They've got 3 first-round picks next year. They want to see what they have. This roster is really loaded front to back, and they've got depth on defense and offense. I believe that they're going to be aggressive with Jalen Hurts. We saw that in the preseason a little bit, the little bit that he played. They came out and just called 10 straight pass plays. He's a guy that's gotten better every year he's played football. So we've got him in this matchup against this Lions defense that, even though adding couple pieces, still is a team that we definitely want to attack. Jalen Hurts comes with that mobility we look for. We've got our guy, A.J. Brown. We've got Devontae Smith. We got Dallas Goedert. It's a situation where I think people might be aggressively saying, with one foot out the door, saying, well, what if they just run the football a lot? And we're going to need the Lions to punch back here. But I do want to be a little bit ahead of the curve and believe that they do want to see what Jalen Hurts has and maybe push him. We might not get a 2019 Lamar Jackson type ceiling from him, but I do believe that the Eagles are going to press the ball through the air and see what Jalen Hurts has early in the season while the schedule is really light.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts in particular on DraftKings at 6,800 seems like a price tag we might not see for, I guess, more than probably this week. We'll see, but we talked about this a little bit on the Locks of the Week video with Jake. He just seems to be far and away one of the best quarterback values on the slate. I think he'll be popular, but in terms of the weapons, I don't know. Maybe people will go to Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, 6,400. It looks like his ownership at the time of this recording is pretty under control. So how do you think people are going to approach this? Do you think we're just going to see a lot of Jalen Hurts naked types of lineups this week, maybe with some Amon-Ra on the other side? I guess this is one that I agree. The game is super interesting, but the ownership seems pretty under control right now.
And that's typically what we will see in a lot of week ones because these prices came out, really early in the summer. And, we did get through the preseason relatively unscathed in terms of major injuries. But with the pricing coming out so early, it's basically rostership's going to be pretty flat this week. You're not going to see anything go wild. There's a lot of values all over the board. So I don't think we'll see especially at the wide receiver position on DraftKings particularly, where we'll see a wide receiver really maybe go 20% or higher. We're not going to see a lot of that, I don't think, this week. So anyone you really want to have kind of, to stack in your lineups, you're going to be able to. I mean, obviously, A.J. Brown is a guy that has he's a high variant player. He's thrived on low efficiency his entire career in Tennessee. If that becomes a problem here in Philadelphia where they run the football, I mean, it's the same conditions, right? He was 4th among all wide receivers in target rate per route run. He's still going to be in a situation where he's going to be running a lot of the same stuff he did in Tennessee because of Jalen Hurts in this running game. A lot of those, digs, stuff over the middle of the field that Jalen Hurts really hasn't thrown to this point of his career. We got Devontae Smith on the outside. He's really cheap. Obviously he's not going to be able to run back the target disparity he had versus the other Eagles receivers with A.J. Brown. And we got a really good spot for Dallas Goedert. I mean, when Dallas Goedert, when they traded Zach Ertz last year after week 6, he ran a pass route on 80% of the Philadelphia dropbacks. I mean, over the course of a full season, that would have been second among all tight ends. If this team's going to be a little more aggressive, he stands to be a pretty good value. He's extremely cheap on DraftKings. He averaged a career high, just under 15 yards per catch, 11 yards per target. This Lions defense really struggled against tight ends last year, 19th in catch rate, 29th in yards allowed per target. So we've got all kinds of stacking options. To me, there's 2 obvious bringbacks here. And one you kind of hit on, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I believe he's supremely undervalued. He's been undervalued in fantasy this entire offseason because the big R word, right? Regression. Everyone gets spooked on regression. Like, there's no way he's going to run back the heater. He closed last year on.
Are we overcorrecting with that kind of stuff now, Reeves? Like, we used to like be like, we saw it in DFS a ton. Like, if a guy blew up, it used to be a situation where like, all right, this guy is going to be super popular next week. And last year we saw that wasn't really the case. Like, people had to see it multiple times before they kind of moved to that new reality. It seems like Amon-Ra, just after that explosion of the end of the season, like, no one wanted to go after him in season long. Like, DFS, it might be the same thing, and we're still just going to ignore this guy. That seems bad.
Yeah, I mean, you look at when Ben Johnson took over at offensive coordinator, and Amon-Ra has talked about this, that Ben Johnson was a huge difference maker in terms of getting him in situations and running the types of routes that he can have success on. Now, a lot of people are going to say, yeah, well, they missed DeAndre Swift for a chunk of that. Obviously, TJ Hawkinson was out for the remainder of the season, but why would the Lions want to go back to just funneling targets strictly through TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift? It's when their offense was the worst. That's why they fired their offensive coordinator. So I believe that we're looking at this from the inverse situation. Like, obviously Amon-Ra showed us like a really high ceiling. I want to get on that, and particularly in this matchup, we had a little bit of sample Amon-Ra in the preseason. And what did he do? He was targeted on 37% of his routes, 3.3 yards per out run. You add a guy like DJ Shark to be a guy that could stretch defenses and just open up more holes for him. It only makes me more excited to roster Amon-Ra St. Brown. And when you look at this matchup versus the Eagles, under Jonathan Gannon, who is, under the tutelage of Matt Eberflus, like, this is a zone-based defense. I mean, they ran zone coverage on 72% of their defensive snaps last year. That was 6th in the league. Amon-Ra St. Brown not only led the Lions in targets against zone coverage, he led the entire NFL in targets against zone coverage over the final 6 weeks of the season. This matchup is made for him to work in those zone coverages to start the season. So, I mean, I look at him. He's a guy I want to say maybe play some of that fear. People are like, oh, does he really have that type of ceiling when the Lions are coming in full strength? And I want to use him as the run back. I do think Hawkinson is interesting in this matchup just because the weakest part of the Eagles defense is very good up front and on the back end. They had James Bradbury. You add Gardy Johnson at safety. Like, this still the linebackers are the area we want to attack them. And that we kind of picked on them all last year. Now, this stuff's going to be fluid. Again, we're looking back to look forward. But, I mean, Philadelphia allowed the most receptions per game to tight ends. That includes a 10-catch game to Hawkinson himself. Now, Hawkinson, though, the problem with him is he's not a guy that really has like a lot of displayed ceiling so far in the NFL. And that's kind of been his one bugaboo. When he doesn't get a lot of volume, he doesn't create his own touchdowns. He doesn't get deep targets. He has just 15 career targets on throws 20 yards or further downfield. To put that in some context, Kyle Pitts had 12 a year ago. He's another guy that he's not a high yet guy, yards after the catch to this point in his career too. So you got to get a lot of catches for him on a site like DraftKings. That's fine. But I do outright just prefer Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, I think some people might double tap a little bit when they see that the price disparity between AJ Brown and Amon-Ra is pretty tight, and they might just go with AJ Brown at that point. But I'm with you on Amon-Ra, and our boys over at Run the Sim seems to agree, and he's the second highest optimal rate player over there. Again, Run the Sims simulates the slate 10,000 times. It's this amazing tool that is, again, one of our sponsors this year. So it's great to see him all the way up there. We also have DeAndre Swift not too far behind in the top 10 of optimal rates. So this game is popping a little bit across the Sims, Reeves. Let's talk a little bit about the running back situation on both sides. Obviously, we really like DeAndre Swift, especially on a site like DraftKings, but the other side of this ball, like Miles Sanders, like it was such a weird situation because this team scored so much on the ground last year. He gets scored 0 touchdowns on the entire season. It seems almost unfathomable for the type of volume that he saw. And if he stays healthy, like he's been a relatively efficient back. He's just someone that everyone loves to hate, and he ends up being like a reasonable GPP option, it seems like, every week. So the running back situation's kind of weird across the board. Yeah,
he's the guy that's missed a chunk of the preseason with the hamstring injury, like Miles Sanders has kind of been prone to do so far in his career. So like he's practiced this week. He looks good to go. The question is, how much extended run does he get at the start of the season with how much practice he's missed this summer? They've got capable guys that contributed in Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell. They also add Trey Sermon to the mix here. We'll see who's active, if he ends up being active, to kind of make it a 4-back thing on Sunday. I mean, obviously Detroit was a team we absolutely hammered last year with running backs. I mean, they were just bludgeoned on the ground, particularly in this game. Eagles running backs had 37 touches and 4 rushing touchdowns in this game. But the problem with Miles Sanders is he's consistently gotten worse as a pass catcher every year of his career. We know Kenneth Gainwell's still there. They also kind of jerk them around a little bit in the red zone. Obviously, you have to deal with Hurts being able to run, but do they bring in Boston Scott? Do they bring in Kenneth Gainwell? Had a pretty large red zone role for his archetype of the running back he is. So it's really tough to diagnose. You have a guy that's not really going to catch passes and he's going to share work, right? Like, it's kind of hard to play those guys, despite it being a really good matchup. If we could play Team Eagles running back, I'd feel pretty good. But here, it's really tough to diagnose like how much ceiling any of these guys really have.
Yeah, one thing that I'll mention, if you're trying to differentiate yourself a little bit off of some Jalen Hurts type of exposure, maybe Jalen Hurts with Miles Sanders is just a really unique way to go. I mean, if you have Jalen Hurts, you're going to be kind of holding hands with some people, but Jalen Hurts plus Miles Sanders or one of these other ancillary options on Philly might be a way to just make a unique type of build off the bat. So before we build a DraftKings lineup, I want to remind everyone to check out my free newsletter, The Touchdown Press, everything you need to cut through the noise, condense all of the analysis from my great guests into one digestible, quick format. So you can sign up today. There's a link in the description for that. But Reeves, let's go ahead and build a DraftKings lineup. We're going to do this every single week for these 3 games that we're going to go through. And let's start just by telling people that this is a lineup that probably shouldn't just toss in immediately and hope that it's going to cash. It's kind of something to get our thoughts together. And if we were to game stack this in like a smaller field tournament, how we would kind of go about that. So are we going with the Hurts side of the ball here with our main stack, Reeves, or do you want to get weird with some Jared Goff stacks?
I definitely do not want to get cute with Jared Goff. I mean,
okay,
we saw on fantasy last year, the last 2 years particularly, it's been really hard to kind of go with like these late cheap quarterbacks, right? Like it's been significantly harder. The guys that have been producing these high end scoring weeks have been the chalk, the guys up top. So it's been really kind of hard to pay down for a guy like Jared Goff and kind of have like that type of a ceiling. So especially this week, looking at pricing, I think it's really, there's not a lot of like really cheap, alluring guys that have like a really strong ceiling. I think Derek Carr is probably the best, like cheapest option to maybe hit that 300-yard bonus. But yeah, let's start with the Hurts side.
Cool.
We will start with Hurts, and then let's play
Arthur Juan.
Let's put Goddard in first.
Nice,
because obviously, you know, Goddard is probably on DraftKings. I think we will see probably a decent amount of Kyle Pitts, probably a decent amount of Travis Kelce. So let's play Goddard as kind of that stack. And, you know, and he's in that weird pricing. Typically people like either to pay up at tight end or pay down on DraftKings, right? Like that 3K, just take whatever receptions they get. You got guys like Cole Kmet down there, Brevin Jordan, maybe even Mo Alley Cox. People will just typically punt, right?
Yeah, or Smith,
on
3,400 too. Like there's a lot of options down there if you want to pay all the way down.
Right. So I feel like Goddard's going to be like that purgatory pricing where people either are like, well, if I've got an extra 15, I'll just go up, right? Or I'll go down. So we'll put him in there, and we will play the Sun God. We'll bring the Sun God back. Amon-Ra.
Yep. Let's take.
And then I think you'll see DeAndre Swift popping a lot of optimals. I'm a little scared of his situation, despite it, you know, being on DraftKings. I mean, you saw when Jamal Williams played last year, the split, especially in the rushing split, was very tough to kind of gauge. I mean, in games Jamal Williams played, DeAndre Swift totaled just 42% of the carries. He's going to have to – it's a really tough matchup. Hippolyte Vitae is on the PUP. He's not playing. Frank Ragnow has not practiced yet this week. I don't know how much efficiency we're going to get at DeAndre Swift plus him sharing time. I think it's really tough to be that excited about him, but I do think his price is fine. Let's not bring him back.
Okay.
Let's kind of pause here. We might go double, but I don't know if we want to do a Jalen Hurts double. Let's do a mini that we'll probably talk about in another video.
Nice.
And let's do Juju Smith-Schuster plus James Conner.
Okay. I like it. Juju at 5,200 seems like an absolute steal. We're definitely going to dig into this game a little bit deeper, but I guess let's talk about Juju like for a quick second though there. Do you think that there's a scenario where we see just an absolute resurgence here? Obviously a completely different situation, an amazingly huge upgrade at quarterback, and obviously a ton of vacated targets with Tyreek Hill leaving. Maybe we have, I mean, with how good this offensive line is, Reeves, like maybe Travis Kelce, they get to split him out a little bit more too, and that's only going to help someone like Juju. So I mean, I love I love from a season-long perspective, Juju's outlook and the rest of it too. Like what's going to happen with MVS, Sky Moore, like it seems like almost like it's going to be a revolving door, but Juju seems like he should be a relatively like constant member of like this offense, right?
Yeah, and it's one of these things we're going to get a reveal on the Chiefs offense. That's kind of the big theme of this week, the reveal. And I do believe the Chiefs are going to be like a lot more multiple without Tyreek Hill. I think they're going to be a lot more opponent based. They're able to do a lot of different things in this particular matchup, which we'll dig a little bit deeper into on the other video. So make sure you click on that one and check that out. But this one definitely, I believe, sets up for Juju. His price is cheap. I think it's a really strong spot for Patrick Mahomes in this game. So I like the pricing, and we're just going to, like I said, run the natural kind of like bring back of the 3-down running back. And he's another guy. Let's put James Conner in the flex too, because he's late.
Good call.
And it gives us a little bit of that 7K in the flex, gives us some flexibility to kind of make some moves here. Let's go with, we got to get one of these good running backs in the play. So the other thing about this slate,
build this week, right? A lot of people are going to be paying up for one of either CMC,
oh,
Taylor,
it's so good,
even the big dog, right? So
my goodness, we got the big dog as a home favorite in a game that could potentially be played in thunderstorms. Like, he's getting the ball like 30 times. We've got Jonathan Taylor against the Texans. CMC's back at 8,500. He might never be 8,500 again. We've got so many good running backs
here, though, Reeves. Unless you have a cheap D you like.
Let's go with one of the running backs we haven't brought up, and he's been kind of like, the way he was handled this season was kind of like everyone was just kind of waiting to see what was going to happen with him. His price kind of dropped. He was just kind of in limbo, and that's Alvin Kamara. Let's go Alvin Kamara on this one, because I think he's going to kind of be the guy that's left out because people want to play Jonathan Taylor, CMC, especially at CMC's price. The big dog. Let's go Alvin Kamara, though. He was really on pace for a career high in touches, and the Saints really brought nobody else in to really compete for touches with him. It's just, 32-year-old Mark Ingram. He played behind the most injured offensive line in the NFL. Unfortunately, that got off to a similar start with Trevor Penning being hurt, but just by default, this offensive line is going to be better. And I believe the offense is going to be better in general with just, getting actual wide receivers on the field to open some things up for him. And he gets this Atlanta defense that just is really porous on paper. So you get receiving ability. We got him as a home, or not a home favorite. He's a road favorite this week, but he's a big favorite, which we like. But yeah, let's go Kamara on this team. And what is that? We got to go D, right? You're going to make me pick a defense.
Well, it just makes it easier visually. I got to know where we're at here. So defense,
got you.
There's a couple cheap ones that I think are at least playable. Jacksonville down there I think is okay. We talked a little bit about, I believe it was trying to remember.
Let's do the Commanders.
Kind of middle of the road defense. The Commanders. The first time that has ever been said.
Feels weird saying the Commanders. It's a terrible name. They should have stuck with the football team. But let's lock them in. They're home favorites. Okay. We don't know if Jacksonville's kind of ready to make that jump, right? Like, it could be something else, but they've got pass rushers. This is a defense. Obviously, they want to have Chase Young, but this is a defense 2 years ago, and they have a lot of the same pieces, was an elite fantasy defense. Mm-hmm. So, I'm listening. This is just me trying to sell myself on a cheap ass defense, but let's put them in. That's the most Commanders analysis I'm providing.
Yeah, there you go. I'm in on that. I think Jacksonville, I don't know, that entire game just is gross. But let's get these last two slots in there, running back.
All right, let's do Let's do Elijah Moore, a player that's probably going to be trailing. He doesn't have to play with Zach Wilson, which is kind of like a secret blessing in disguise. Him and Zach Wilson connected on just 45% of their targets. 19 of 42 targets were all that he caught from Zach Wilson. The rest of the other Jets quarterbacks, 69%. 10 of 13, particularly in just a little bit of small sample of Flacco. This is going to be a pass script for the Jets, home big road dogs. We don't know if Marcus Peters is going to play in this game. So the Ravens are still, they're not quite fully back up to full strength yet to where they'll be in season. Just kind of cheap, taking the upside here. He's a guy I'm high on, just having a little bit of conviction. And then we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up with a running back that has a little Q tag next to his name, but tweeted that he's 100% fine, and that's Chase Edmonds. Yep. Chase Edmonds sneakily is, I don't want to say he has the ceiling of what Austin Eckler had a year ago, because Austin Eckler played on one of the team that just reached the red zone at the highest rate in NFL history. But Edmonds is kind of one of those guys that has like that same archetype and situation of like, is he going to get goal line carries, right? But what if he does, and we're early to it? This is obviously a team that's going to run the football. They're going to run it well under Mike McDaniels. And the Patriots were a team that like we beat up on with running backs a year ago, which people don't really realize. I mean, they were 27th in yards per carry allowed to running backs. They were also 24th in receiving points allowed per game to running backs, which we're getting with Chase Edmonds inherently, even if he doesn't get the touchdowns. And they lost so many pieces. This Patriots defense has lost so many pieces this offseason.